planning team. Thank you. We've had this amazing planning team in place. So Dr. Howard from MSU is one of those, but just to kind of let you know that without that team, this work wouldn't be possible. And then really wanted to share the goals for why CBL at GoCSD, spending time with that. And really, we wanted to create something that would be very foundational, but very helpful for our districts as everybody's learning and growing around the topic of competency-based learning and competency-based education. And also put it together in very small bite-sized chunks. So you guys can take it for your own personal learning, but then say, you know what? We've got 5 minutes at a faculty meeting coming up or a team meeting coming up that we can insert some resources and share with others. So that was the overall goal between the development of the work for CBL modules. But then today, we just really wanted to have a chance to walk you through those modules and say, okay, here's what GoCSD has developed already. And we are calling it CBL 101 because we want it just to be that very foundational level and then help you see how it relates to other pieces of work in state and through GoCSD. And then take some time to let you have some discussion and learn your needs as well as we think about this topic. What else might we do to support you? So as we look at that, then I wanted to I'm going to just start and walk you through some modules. So please interrupt anytime or hop into the chat anytime you have a question about something that's being shared. But if you're not familiar, when you go to the GoCSD website and click on the professional learning link, there's a drop-down menu that you can select on-demand courses. So CBL 101 is an on-demand course and it's free to anyone, our membership, outside our membership, because we really want to help spread the work. So you just go to the on-demand learning and then there'll be a link to click and register to give you access to all the resources that we're getting ready to share with you. Has anybody had a chance to do or utilize any of the on-demand modules outside of CBL already through GoCSD?
I enjoyed the retirement one. I used that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And if you guys haven't seen that, it's just sometimes there's so much misunderstanding about our retirement system, especially for our young teachers. So that's one that was kind of we knew there was a need there. So putting that out there so you guys can share it with new staff. Why retirement? Thank you for sharing that. All right. So as you go there, when you get to the on-demand and you register for CBL 101, it'll pop up just like a very traditional online course would. We built it in modules with very small chunks within each module. So it opens up, first of all, to an introductory page, just kind of like, here's the nuts and bolts of this module. So very, very brief. But then from there, you can start with module 1. So it's definitely self-paced. There's some opportunities for interaction, but it's at your leisure. You can get in and look at the resources and share the resources. So as you look at module 1, the planning team kind of all divided and conquered. For this particular module, Dr. Hedgepath and Dr. Deanna Sheets from Branson helped put this module together. So module 1, if you're looking for information about kind of the why CBL, why now? So module 1 gives you the historical perspective, like what happened in the state with this Success Ready work group? What did that look like? And what about the formation of the Success Ready student network? So it gives the history, it gives you the timeline there. So kind of laying that foundation for the why of the work. And it also shares with you that you can share here's the Missouri framework. Because the Missouri framework contains all those high pieces of research-based information around competency-based learning. But we also added a very unique feature of wanting it to be that real-world personalized learning. as well. So this is the module that you would go to just to kind of learn, here's the history and here's the foundational pieces that are in place. And Dr. Sheets had hoped to be with us this afternoon and had to pop off to go to one of her buildings. But Dr. Hedgepath, is there anything you would add about that opening module that I may have missed?
No, I think probably the only layer I would add is the work in Missouri around the Success Ready Student Network is founded in those 8 elements of a competency-based learning system. And that work all comes from the Aurora Institute. So that's a really good resource in addition to what we're sharing today that you can look at to find more insight around kind of why we do competency-based learning and some of the key tenets to it. Some of you that are in the secondary level, I think there's beginning to be a buzz maybe in our region around this notion of real world learning and just how we can think about alternative credit and allowing for competency partial credit for, authentic kinds of experiences, but also knowing those kinds of place-based experiences can happen in elementary classrooms as well. So it's really exciting work. It motivates kids when we think about that real world piece, but those other 7 elements really have to be in place for the real world learning to come to fruition. So that's probably more than you wanted, Dr. Yonke, but you can, I'm kind of passionate about this work.
Yeah, no, and that is perfect. One thing that we really tried to do in the modules too is put links to those resources for you. So you can go to Aurora Institute and there is so much information there. So within the modules, we'll put links like, okay, here's this much information. Here's the link to go and learn more. So kind of that foundational piece that you'll find there in module 1. And typically we try to make each section about 3 to 5 minutes, just so it's a very fast snapshot. So each of those pages that you see there. Probably one of the big rocks that we introduce in module 1 is the idea, yes, this framework, which you guys saw the visual there with the students as the center focus, but also the 8 elements. So I'm going to give you a minute. I just shared that slide with you of the 8 elements and give you a minute to read through those and then think about how do those 8 elements connect or relate to something that's already happening in your world with education, or what is something that stands out to you as very different in your world. So I'm going to give you a minute to share what might be some similarities, what might be some differences, and then you can feel free to come off mute and share or put something in the chat. All right, let's have a couple people share out. What did you see as maybe commonalities or something that struck you as very different than we have in current practice?
I noticed the piece on differentiated support based on individual learning needs reminds me a lot of the work we do with our student data analysis and data meetings and RTI and some of those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of connections there. Thanks, Jenny.
I think a lot of our conversations that we're having right now are around assessments and assessment being timely and relevant and throughout the year rather than one snapshot.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that's been on our mind, right, Travis, as far as what does this look like in practice to be, that responsive to the assessment piece. Thank you. And Amber, you want to share? I know you just dropped something in the chat as far as the university level. Would you mind to share?
Yeah, I was just thinking how I feel like these 8 elements are really similar to how I taught in K-12 when I was in that realm. And so I brought those over to higher ed. But for most of my students, it's like a learning curve. Like they'd never learned in these ways, or they've never had choice in what they were doing or had real world experiences. And so it feels like they're relearning how to be a student. And so I'm excited for 20 years from now when they come to me from high schools and elementary schools that have had this way of learning and approaching assessment.
Thank you for sharing that. And I will give a shout out to our university partners. All the regional universities are members of Go CSD now, and they've really gotten involved in the work, because I know those of us that have been in pre-K 12 for a long time, it's like, okay, when we do this work, what will happen when they go to the university? And it's exciting to see, okay, if we start teeing our kids up for success with this, that it can be carried on for them at the university. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts or connections there? Good. Okay. So what you're going to see every time we created a module, we thought, okay, we ended this module, but now we know there's more questions, right? So everybody starts digging into the 8 elements and then realizing, oh, what about this? And what about this? So that's kind of where we went when we started developing module 2. So module 2 consists of, so you kind of have that foundational of module 1. Module 2 really consists of some great video conversations from 3 leaders around the state of Missouri who have been doing some of this work with their districts. So Dr. Jeanette Westfall of Liberty, Dr. Tina Plummer from Pattonville, and Dr. Deanna Sheets from Branson. Somehow Dr. Hedgepath convinced them all to be on video, which was lovely. But we asked them this question. So explain to us in your own words, what is CBL? Because there's so many things floating out there, right? So we think it's this and this. So this module is really a conversation we had with them, Dr. Hedgepath had with them, asking them to identify in your own words, what is it? And then in your own words, what is it not? Because I think for a lot of us, when we started hearing about it, we thought, well, what is this going to look like? How are you going to manage this piece? So these are little chunks of the conversations with them. And then as we had the conversations, a couple big pieces floated to the top. And one of those was the idea that CBL really is a lot of mindsets, right? How we view learning. And I think, Travis, you captured it perfectly with saying even our thoughts about how assessment has changed over the past several years feeds into this work as well. So really talking to them, and then really they explained a little bit more about what it means to be time-based, because I think in K-12 that's been something that we've had in place forever. This is the grade level. This is what our schedules look like. This is what Carnegie says, the number of minutes and units we must have. So this module really serves to help us wrap our minds around, okay, here's what it is, here's what it isn't, and then just allowing for discussion around those pieces. So Pam, anything else that stood out to you, Dr. Hedgepath, as you visited with those 3 leaders that you would want to pull out that we highlighted in this module?
No, I think the purpose of those videos, of course, was for educators, but what I'm finding is that they're even good videos for parents as well. So like as you're trying to build understanding within your stakeholders about competency-based learning, being reminded that we need to bring parents along and community members along, and even our board members as we're beginning to think about this mind shift. So I might just shout out Branson and a couple of other districts who have used these videos at each building as a background, as an overview of what CBL is and what it is not, and just kind of starting the conversations. And then they're using those 8 elements around CBL to have either another conversation or a deeper conversation, with just the purpose of just laying some foundation about actually this work that's getting quite a bit of momentum in our state.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. So as we finished that module, we thought, okay, what next? So the planning team kind of got together and said, okay, what might module 3 look like? Because we're just kind of building it as we go. So I'm going to ask, this is the module that I had the pleasure of partnering with Dr. Tinkler and Dr. Howard from MSU to create. So I'm going to ask Amber to jump in, and she willingly said that she'd share kind of the highlights of Module 3 with you.
Sure. So we start the module with just kind of a review of the framework that was developed by the SRSN. We went over that in module 1, but we wanted to kind of reconnect with that to frame our learning in this module. And then we dive into those 8 elements that we just read in more detail. So there's a lot of kind of catchphrases in the 8 elements that are defined in this module using resources from the Aurora Institute, as well as a few other researchers that we linked all of those resources within the module. So that the 8 critical elements page is like really heavy with a lot of resources about those different elements so that you have a good understanding of that. And then we allow anybody participating to connect it to their own practice. So there's kind of a graphic organizer embedded there that you can make a copy of that takes you through kind of a reflection that has the 8 elements and then 3 columns where it's like, this is what it looks like currently in my practice. This is what I want it to look like. And then what do I need to do to get there? So that kind of allows you to bridge the theory of these are the 8 elements and this is what I want it to look like in my practice. Our hopes there is that moving forward, people would be able to use that reflective guide to build on their understanding as we maybe later dive into those 8 elements in a little more detail. So that's kind of the big picture of Module 3.
Great. Thank you, Amber, for that. One of the things that Amber touched on was that we realized that we maybe needed to add some clarity to some of the vocabulary, because that's where I think sometimes people are like, what does that really mean? We've used the word differentiation for so many years, right? So what does that mean? So Amber did a great job. She actually created a Quizlet within that module. So it's, kind of a lighthearted way to say, let's talk about the commonalities of these vocabulary terms in the 8 elements there. So at this point, that's where we're at in development of the work. So I want to take a little bit of time and just give you a chance. We're going to go into a couple different breakout rooms for just about 5 minutes and just give you a chance to talk with others in the room about, when you think about competency-based learning, what are your wonderings? What else might you want to know? Or as you think of sharing this out with your colleagues, what else might they want to know? So just kind of, we're going to do a breakout chat, excuse me, and share. And then before the 5 minutes is up, if you choose someone to kind of be your reporter as we get back in. So before we do breakouts, any questions that I might answer? Okay, I'll do some breakout rooms and we'll watch for the time, about 5 minutes. We'll bring everyone back together. Be sure to take a minute and say hello and introduce yourselves. All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, I'm excited to hear who your spokesperson was and what you were sharing and talking about. Breakout group number 1, who'd you guys nominate?
Was that our group?
I think everybody's nodding at you, Allison.
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway from our group was that everybody's at different spots. So whether it's exploring, whether it's being exposed to a little bit more, maybe it's looking at resources, maybe just hearing, accessing what other people are doing and where they're at on their journey. And so but I also think that's encouraging because we're all within a small chat room. We're all in different spots and in areas in this, just exploring what it looks like, or again, taking steps toward implementation.
Great, thank you. So maybe that idea of getting more information about where other people are at would be helpful. Great, thank you. All right, how about group number 2?
I'll speak for group number 2. A lot of those same conversations were taking place. I think everybody's at a different level. A lot of us were at that early learning stage, and just experiencing it, having conversations around really those mindsets. I think every building that was in our group was kind of at that stage of shifting mindsets,
Okay.
but then also had the question of what does that look like in a logistically, what does that look like whenever it's applied? Looking at it from a whole school perspective or from a district perspective, what are those systems? And I know there's districts that are working through that, and some are a little bit further along in that. There was Amber had a book that she dropped in the comment section. Maybe I'm not seeing it.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. There it is. So that was a good resource that she had for the team.
It's great. Good. So really thinking, I heard a couple different things. So maybe some more resources too around this idea of mindsets and mind shifts, if you will, right? Because I think that's where a lot of us are at. Like it's not, we believe in the work, we know the work is valuable, but how do you have the mind shift? But then just as importantly, logistically and realistically, what does it look like in practice? Did I capture that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. And Amber, thanks for putting that book in. That is a book that we thought as we move forward, we need to share with everybody. Southwest curriculum directors have been doing a book study around that this year. And it's a very much kind of nuts and bolts book by Marzano and Finn that dig into kind of the practicalities of it, and a really easy read as well. It's not theoretical. It's much more, at least in my opinion, user friendly. And Amber, would you say the same with that? Doing that. Okay. Anything else from your conversations that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. Not from our team.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm taking notes there. So let me share kind of what we're planning for our very next step with you on the screen. And then I'm going to ask Dr. Hedgepath to share some opportunities at the state level as well. So at our last planning meeting, which I think it was last week, Amber, you'll have to help me remember, the planning team really talked about trying to start kind of putting a bow on CBL 101, if you will, but giving more resources like you guys were mentioning. So module 4, what we're thinking is kind of this idea of using that strategy, what, so what, now what? So in module 1 and pretty much 2 and 3, we talked about the what is CBL? But start digging in and saying, well, what does it mean to us where we're at, depending on where our district is at? And then how do we move forward? So I think as breakout room 2 said, what are the logistical pieces? So building that module around some more resources, like if you're at this level, this competency-based handbook would probably be the perfect thing for your team to dig into. If you're at this level, then reach out to the Success Ready Student Network and become a part of that work. So that's kind of our thinking with module 4. And then also we're getting ready to roll out GoCSD's we've created a professional learning framework that we wanted to be very systematic but personalized at the same time. So trying to help people see, okay, here's going to be the menu of options for summer and next school year through GoCSD, but here's how they relate to competency-based learning. So perhaps you're at the stage of learning where you want to know, okay, what about this whole assessment piece? How do you use proficiency scales to get to where you want? That would be an offering that GoCSD would offer this school year. Or what if you're thinking, you know what, if I look at high reliability schools levels, you know what, we need to make sure everything in our district's in place really strongly for tier 1 instruction. What does that look like? So aligning our offerings to more of a systematic view so districts are able to see, yeah, we're going to do this while we're still learning and growing in our capacity to be competency-based learning. So based on that, ideas, do you think we're hitting the mark? Do you think that there's something else in addition that we could be working on in development?
I think that makes sense as far as that next piece.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. And I know some of you are thinking, well, Debbie, I need to even get in and explore these modules to see what I can do with them for myself and my staff as well. But Republic Team, anything that will that meet your needs, or is there something else you think that we could be pulling out to give you for information? They're all really quiet. Okay. Well, just know, and I'm going to share this in a minute, we really, really value your ideas. And just that's why we wanted today's Zoom meeting to kind of be, let's share ideas, but we value your ideas as well. So this two-way communication will make the process and our learning so much stronger. So I am going to ask Dr. Hedgepath volunteered that she'd share a little bit about just some other learning opportunities around the work that the state is doing as well.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you all for the insight. And again, as Debbie said, we really do want your feedback. We want this to be something meaningful that you can use with your own teams, your leadership teams, as well as your educator teams. Because the purpose, as was stated, is really to build foundational capacity, just understanding what this is. What is competency-based learning? And Travis, you hit the nail on the head, and we find this across the whole state. Districts are in different places. And what's also kind of funny is that districts actually that think they're not that far along, when they really dig into the work, they're a little farther along than they realize. And so I think that's a really important thing to think about as you're looking at those 8 elements. What a great opportunity professional learning experience with your team just to examine, self-analyze as a district, where are we on this journey? And then that hopefully will help you along with your professional learning needs assessment to see the kind of professional learning that maybe needs to support like the next places where you want to take your district. And so I set that all up because the work that we're doing with the Success Ready Student Network, I have the privilege of working with 4 other state facilitators, longtime practitioners that are partnering with DESE to basically design up a new type of an assessment and accountability system with this competency-based learning mindset, personalized learning mindset. And so that's kind of how the two are working together. We're rethinking assessment and accountability, but through an instructional mindset. And so we're actually with the SRSN doing 2 things. We've got 3 different innovation zones who are learning together, and we're learning about competency-based learning. And it really can look different, as Travis said, in different districts. And so just helping to reflect on the key elements and then how you want to design that to work for your particular district. So that's one piece of the Success Ready Student Network. This work has been commissioned by the State Board of Education and DESE as the result of a work group that was put together last year, which took a look at all the historical work that had been done around accountability and assessments in the past. And on this work group, we had kids, we had business leaders, we had school board members, we had educators, teachers, principals, just the full gamut. And they recommended that we put together this network. The network consists of 3 different zones, and we call them innovation zones. And this is where it connects to the assessment and accountability. The innovation zones actually have 2 purposes. One is to rethink the instructional system and then to develop instructional and curriculum materials that can actually be of practical use in the classroom. And the other, as I said, is to rethink and reimagine our current assessment and accountability. So when we think about these innovation zones, all 3 are working on the one side, the learning piece. And if you're not in the ILDZ, the the second tier, I encourage you to do that. And that's open to universities, and Missouri State's already a part. It's open for districts, and it's open for regional and state organizations. And I actually put the link in there, and we're still accepting. We're just going to have ongoing application for the ILDZ, the second tier, the learning tier. The commitment is you come once a month, spend 2 hours with us, learn along with us around competency-based learning, and then also to be informed about the work of the other tier, which is called the system design zones, the other level, the top level of the innovation zones. Now, let me tell you about this group. They are working really hard right now. We have 25 districts. We have 5 down in Southwest Missouri, and they come together frequently, face to face. They're all across the state. They're reimagining what assessment should be, and with that, the metrics that drive accountability. So those of you that have just gotten your APRs, you're going, we got to do something different. And this is the different. Again, it's being designed from the field up in conjunction with DESE. We work with them frequently, especially Lisa Serino over in the assessment department. And really the bottom line is to provide accountability metrics that are meaningful for all stakeholders, including kids. And so it's about this competency-based approach in creating data that's useful for all levels of the system, classroom, building, district, and state, to really know where learning is and then address the learning as it is in real time. So this group is going to be submitting to the state board in June a waiver from the current accountability system. And they are hoping to get a reprieve from the current APR with the purpose of redesigning and rethinking what that APR could look like. So just think of the difference. In the past, those models have been developed top down. And in this case, it's being developed by the field up. We're hopeful. DESE's at the table with us. We have lots of conversation with them. And at this point, they're very much supportive of the work that we're doing. So I share all that with you is because we'll be accepting more districts to start another SDZ cohort next year. So hopefully some of those folks that have been engaged with our second tier, the ILDZ district level, will say, hey, we want to be up there doing the SDZ work. We want to pave the way for what this new assessment and accountability system can look like. But no pressure. You don't have to start there, but you can start the learning opportunities by just enrolling in the innovation zone, the first one, the IL, or the second one, the ILDZ. Here's the other great thing. It's free. These are free, wonderful professional learning opportunities that you get to do with people all across the state. So I'm kind of thinking, why not do it? So we're taking applications. If you decide to apply, just let me know, because I can go in, look at your application and get you started just right away. Our Wednesday learning sessions are the second Wednesday of every month, 2 hours, and each district or organization can send 2 people. All right, lots of information. Let you think about that, and I'll answer a few questions if I can help you.
Any questions for Dr. Hedgepath?
You know, I do want to make a connection. The SRSN is really about deeper implementation of competency-based learning, but GoCSD has a role in that too. Like we will continue to support and align the work that's happening with the SRSN. And there's actually another piece. You can't do competency-based learning without really strong tier 1 instruction. And so we're going to be doing some additional work around that with our group, our region as well. And we're going to encourage other regional groups to focus on that as well. We've got to have an understanding of the science of learning and, you know, what an instructional model looks like that is strong for that tier 1 level approach. So that will be a huge role of what we offer as far as GoCSD, as well as these other elements of CBL.
Yeah. And just a plug of encouragement, every district on this call has so many strengths. And we know that in Southwest, but I also think we're pretty humble. So I've been able to be a part of the network as representing Go CSD and going to those learning sessions. And when I hear them talk, it could be some of you. Does that make sense? Because I think everybody's growing and learning, but your districts are doing some pretty amazing, wonderful things. Just the thought processes and the work that you're doing is outstanding. So I know sometimes you don't feel that way or that you're as far as everyone else, but everybody's just beginning on the journey. And so I'll make a plug again for that handbook that Amber shared. We'll be sure to put that in module 4 for you guys as well. But when I started reading that along with Aurora Institute, I just saw so many amazing things that are already happening in your districts. And then as Pam mentioned, we want to be really intentional next year to this summer and next fall about the support that we give in a systematic way. So be watching for that rollout of the summer and next year coming up soon. But I will give a plug for Innovation Summit. So our both keynotes are amazing and will help us on this road. But our keynote on day 2, Tina Bugarin, is going to really kind of help launch and talk about that highly effective tier 1 that we all want to be sure is in place. So just lots of great opportunities and learning there. But anything else as we wrap our time that I might help you with or Go CSD might be supportive of in your work?